Starting with the 2012 A-level paper, part 2. What are the major accounts and items in the balance of payments statement? And if you get a question like this, Lamai, this is 3 marks, no, just to draw the structure. So what are the major accounts? We have the current account. Inside the current account, what do we have? We have the trade account. We have our services account. And then there is the primary income account. Okay, there is the primary income account. And also we have the secondary income. After that, what do we have? We have our capital account. What do we have in the capital account? You don't have to you don't have to mainly write what and what is in the capital account, but if you really want, you can give a small line and say, what does this include, Lamai? All transactions relating to non-produced, non-financial assets and capital transfer. What are non-produced, non-financial assets? Things like goodwill, patents, copyrights, licenses, all of that goes under non-produced, non-financial assets. And any capital transfers, like foreign grants, these big grants that you might get, those kind of stuff. And after that, you have the financial. So in the financial account, what do you have? You have foreign direct investment. You have portfolio investment. You have other investment. You have other reserves and also financial derivatives. In Sri Lanka, we don't have any derivatives at the moment, so that number is a 0. Okay. You can put that there. Yes. If you want trade and service account, you can combine together and say goods and service account. No. Difference between current and capital transfers. Current transfers are usually something that happen on a regular basis. So current transfers also, there are private transfers and there are also official transfers. Now, for example, remember, I'm hoping you all were there when we did the MCQs. I talked about that. Remember, things like food donations. Now, food donation kind of things happens regularly. They don't just come and donate food once and go. Usually, if the World Bank or someone is doing a food donation to Sri Lanka, it will be a regular thing. Let's say for a year, every month, they will donate. So those kind of things go under the secondary income, official current transfers. And even private transfers, like for example, worker remittances. Or let's say someone working abroad is sending money to you, giving you a gift. Those are all current transfers. What are capital transfers? Those are like the one-time big payments. Let's say the Indian government is giving Sri Lanka a donation of 500 million, a one-time big payment. Those will go under capital transfer. That's the difference. Derivatives again, Lama, derivatives, you don't have to go through in detail in your syllabus. We would have spoken in our theory class also about this hedging agreements and all. These are hedge agreements, spot and forward agreements, right? There are different stuff which at your level not needed in detail. This itself is another subject if you're learning something like finance, doing a finance related degree. Derivatives is a complete subject. It's a big area at your level, not needed. Okay. There is no definition for non-produced, non-financial. So non-produced, that means it's not made by man. Non-financial, it's not a financial asset. So what are produced assets? Produced assets are only things like buildings, factories, motor vehicles. Those are produced assets. What are financial assets? Shares, debentures, treasury bills, treasury bonds. So capital account has non-produced, non-financial. So those are the goodwill. So definitions and stuff, it's there in your tutor also. You can even Google stuff. Okay. Right. Then The next one. Distinguish between a country's terms of trade and balance of trade. Difference between terms of trade and the balance of trade. Again, simple to distinguish. So for 2 marks, you talk about what is terms of trade. For 2 marks, you talk about what is balance of trade, but you have to show the difference. So what is terms of trade, Lama? Terms of trade looks at using your exports, how many units of imports can you import? No, how many goods can you import? So your terms of trade is your export price index divided by your import price index into 100. So we look at, by exporting 100 goods, how much of goods can we import? The terms of trade takes into consideration only the price of the good. It doesn't take into consideration the value or the quantity. Then what is balance of trade? Balance of trade is the difference between your value of exports, merchandise exports, we say tangible exports, minus the value of your import. That's how you calculate your balance of trade. So you can say balance of trade is a much more broader concept than terms of trade, because terms of trade takes into consideration only the price of imported goods, imports and exports. Balance of trade takes into consideration the value of exports and imports. So value means price into quantity is only the value. We discussed in the MCQs in the last session we did. Okay, so you can talk about those, Laman. That's all that you have to do. For 2 marks, talk about what is terms of trade, give the equation and all. For 2 marks, talk about what is balance of trade. Your question will be somewhat answered that way. Balance of trade and income terms of trade. No, they're not the same. Okay. Right. Then the fourth question. What is the role of WTO in international trade? Who is WTO, Lamai? The World Trade Organization. So you need to talk about 4 roles now. Can we explain terms of trade? Yes, yes. So that's, guys, your answer format is that, right? Now don't confuse. So for 2 marks in 1 paragraph, you talk about terms of trade, and then for 2 marks in another paragraph, you talk about balance of trade. Don't combine the 2 answers. Don't put everything in 1 paragraph. Yes, by now, I'm guessing you would have done a lot of papers and you should be okay with answer writing. Final seminar will start next Thursday. I will send a flyer on the group. It will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, full day. So it will go for around 20 to 25 hours. Because I need to finish the entire syllabus with the main areas. It's going to be 20-25 hours. I'm thinking of a fee which is a comparatively lower level. I'm not going to burden you too much. I'll inform of the group. Okay. Okay. So what are the roles of the World Trade Organization, Lamai? Okay. Okay. They provide a forum for trade negotiations. Forum for trade negotiations. So they provide the platform for any sort of trade negotiation. So they get countries together, get them to negotiate with each other. They do that. Okay. Then they implement and monitor trade agreements. Okay. Then yes, settlement of trade dispute, settlement of trade disputes. Anything else? One more. Ideally 4 marks, so you write 4. One more. What else can we give? Cooperating other investment. Cooperating with other organizations, okay, but not a main role. Yes, you can say providing technological aids, and training programs, perfectly fine. So now these are there in your tute, okay? Go through whatever tute that you all are learning. These are directly there. So ideally then, here they are saying, what is the role? Usually for a question like, what is the role? Even if you state it's enough. But to be on the safer side, just write a small one-line explanation if needed. So for example, trade negotiations, write a small one line. Yes, reviewing national policies of member countries, yes, completely okay. Okay, so give a small one-line explanation. For example, forum for trade negotiations, you can say, these people, what do? They create a platform for countries to negotiate with each other in terms of their trading policies. One small line. Loans, I don't think. World Trade Organization is not really a person who provides loan. So don't write that as an answer. IMF will provide loans. World Bank will provide loans. Asian Development Bank will provide loans, but not World Trade Organization. They are more into trade and all of that, not the kind of people who will give you loans. So be careful there. Right. Then Lamai, question 5. See, same thing again. Describe what is meant by, yeah, you can say reducing tariff level, but then again, not directly. They will encourage countries to reduce tariff level. What is meant by a managed floating exchange rate system? So this is something that we discussed before also. Managed float lamai. Now you have to write for 4 marks. Earlier, when you are distinguishing in the previous paper, you wrote for 2 marks. No? So now you expand your answer. You start your answer by talking about what? Talking about a managed floating exchange rate is a combination of a floating and a this. It was designed to get the benefits of both the different exchange rate systems. In a managed floating exchange rate system, what can you say? You can say the exchange rate is set to freely float between a certain range. However, if the exchange rate is to cross this range, or let's say go above or below this range, the central bank or the monetary authority of the country would intervene and keep it between. That is what you call it as a managed float exchange rate system. And then in order to intervene, you can say the monetary authority would require certain amount of reserves. You can explain if you want. You can go into detail on if the exchange rate is going to depreciate, how they will create an artificial supply for the foreign currency. If the exchange rate is going to appreciate, how they can create an artificial demand for the foreign currency, which we have spoken about in our previous classes along in the seminar as well. You can show if you want. There is no diagram really in this. If you really want, you can show a small diagram and give a small explanation. For example, you can say currently the exchange rate is at 250. So the central bank might allow it to go between 270 and 230, or let's say 260 and 240. In case it goes above this, central bank will then intervene. You can give that. Is that okay? Same question again, repeated. Fine. 2012. Initially determined by CBSL, not really, but you can say this, right? So in the short term, central bank will artificially manage it. But in the long term, in a managed floating exchange, the long term, due to demand and supply, it will be more like a float. Now, even if you take Sri Lanka, we've had a managed floating. In the short term, temporary basis, central bank intervenes. But in the long term, overall, our currency keeps on depreciating. Forever, it hasn't been between the range, let's say 100 and 120. Little by little, it has been depreciating. But The short term to prevent fluctuations, now for example, exchange rate won't go from today 320 to tomorrow 340. So they will manage that. But little by little, they will allow it to depreciate. That's what happens in a managed floating exchange rate. Okay.